There's no doubt. So let me move you to the practice platform. Meanwhile, those who are missing these classes, I do not have recordings for them, unfortunately. So if you miss, you just bear with the videos with the classes and you watch that. These ones here, I'm not recording them, so you should be aware of that. Okay, let us move to the practice platform. I'm sharing my practice, my log. Okay, we have this, okay. Okay. All right, let me move with you. Ivan?
Yes.
Are you able to see the test reach now? Okay, so we look for SBR. Ivan, where should I go next? Ivan, are you going to international, Ireland, or UK? Okay, we go to this past exam. We want March, June 2021. Let me unassign it. I can then reassign. I move to the left hand side, come to this. It is not yet here. I have to wait. Yes, now it is uploaded. So I can resume. We go to question 4C. Please make sure that you practice this. Make sure that you go through the my practice platform so that you get used to the exam setting. So this is how your exam will be. Okay, go to next. Okay, so this is question 1, but what we need is question 4. So Ivan, where do I go? Ivan, this is question 1. This is question 1. But I want us to discuss question how. David, how do I access question 4? Perfect. Go to Navigator. When you go to Navigator, you get the question you want. You come to question 4. Ivan, have you got it? Are you seeing this? Let me check. Hey, but Ivan. Now you've seen it. Okay. So now this is question 4. We can have our word processor. We play around with it. Dear students, practice can make you pass. Overreading content can make you fail. Ivan, is that clear? With SCCA, the more you practice, the more you get the concepts. The more you read, the more you confuse yourself. David, am I clear? So if you want to fail, keep reading. If you want to pass, keep practicing. That is the secret I'm giving you. Practice, you pass. Overread, you fail. And I know we shall be here to see, to prove. Okay, so I want to do question 4C. Question 4C, Roman number 2. So I'm going to copy this. We've done this before. Then I'll put this one here. I'm interested in question 4C, Roman number 2, which is on government grants. So let me remove this because I'm not answering it. These are 4 marks. So discuss how the following should be accounted for in the financial statements for the year ended 31st December 2007. The cost of repairing the environmental damage. Students, when you are reading, make sure that you break the question into the different parts. So that is the first question. So what I'm going to do, I need brief headings. So I'll put question part C, Roman number 2. And the first one is the cost of repairing the environmental damage. I underline it. I bold and then underline it. Meanwhile, this is IS 37, so I will not discuss it. IS 37. What you should know is your paper is going to come with very many standards. So if you cherry pick the standards, you'll be on the road to doom. You must read all the standards that we are covering in those videos. Okay, so that's the first part, meaning that the examiner gave these 2 marks. Gave these 2 marks. Then the other one is the potential receipt of government compensation. This is also another question. Wherever you see "and," then there are 2 different questions that you must attempt separately. So our second heading is going to be, I will not say, we can say the potential receipt, or you can say potential receipt. So we can now, so the first part we shall not answer. The second part is the one that is on IAS 20. IAS 20. And the examiner therefore gave it also 2 marks, so that you can earn the 4 marks. Then, is that clear?
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to close this now. This comment, I don't need it. I want us to answer the second part, so that we can earn our 2 marks. Basically, we need roughly 2 to 3 points, and we pass. And when you look at the background, we said after doing this, you come and read the background. Silco manufactures aluminium products and operates in a region that has suffered a natural disaster on 1st November 2006. Dear students, those who have watched IAS 36, does this sound some bells? David? Oh, not yet, okay. This is IAS 36, impairment. But okay, these are indicators of impairment. There has been an increase in operating costs as the company had to replace a regional supplier with a more costly international supplier. The year end of Silco is 31st December. This information dates are very important in SBR, wherever you see them. Year end 31st December 2007. The following exhibits are available on the left-hand side of the screen. Provide information relevant to the question. Relevant to the question. So they're telling us that these are the exhibits. And if you want to answer the questions, read them. 1. Non-current assets provides information about the non-current assets destroyed by natural disaster. Wow. Wow. Destroyed by the natural disaster. So someone is going to think about IAS 10, but also IAS 36 impairment, including the effect on the decommissioning of a power plant. Of course, if you watched IAS 16, now decommissioning costs are not new to you. Exhibit 2. Other natural disaster consequences. This exhibit describes the potential costs of repairing the environmental damage. Of course, this is also a decommissioning cost. IAS 16, even 37. The associated government compensation and the associated government compensation. So meaning that for us to answer part C, Roman number 2, we need to read exhibit 2 and specifically look out for one that talks about associated government compensation. I will not read others because that's what we need. So our answer should be picked from exhibit 2 because that's where they talk about government grants. So we open our response option, open exhibit 2. And once we open it, of course we said we should have only 2 windows at a time, and we should adjust very well. So you adjust very well your window. So in the background they told us there is something on government compensation. So you see you have other natural disaster consequences, then you have environmental damage and government compensation, meaning that even in exhibit 2 there are different paragraphs, but in the first heading that's where our answer is. So we don't have to read all the other information. David, are you getting it? Okay, so let me highlight that. So we are only going to read this. We are only going to read this up to here. Okay, up around here. Only that. That's where the answer is. But let me zoom out so that I can be able to read the things very well. David, is it now clear? You see, you can play around with the platform. Okay. So we are reading on the first 2 paragraphs and see if we can answer. Because they want us to show, we said you leave the question there so that you can keep reading it. Discuss how the following should be accounted for: the cost of repairing the environmental damage, okay, and the potential receipt of government compensation. Okay, let's read and see what are these guys giving. SECO has in the past repaired minor environmental damage that it has caused, but it has never suffered a natural disaster on this scale. Dear students, this is IAS 37, and this is a constructive obligation. I know once you cover it, you'll be able to pick the answers directly. So, this first paragraph is very funny. This first paragraph, okay, is answering this part. And even answers are just there. I know once you cover that standard, you come back and see that things will be flowing. So this one is answering that part. Now the paragraph that we need is this one. Okay? The paragraph that we need is this one. The government announced on 1st December 2007. The year end is 31st December 2007. The government announced on 1st December 2007 that there would be compensation of 50 million available to repair the environmental damage only. So the government is giving some compensation. So it is giving a government grant. The government is giving a government grant of how much? Of only 50 millions. So let us put it here. The government has offered. Now I know people will be confused. Why is it coming as underlined and bold? Because we underlined and bolded our space. But you can remove that. Control B, Control U. Okay. And that companies should apply for the compensation by 31st December 2007. So companies have to apply. Companies have to apply. By which date? By the end of the financial year of the company that we are dealing with. Okay. By 1st March 2008, when the financial statements were approved, amazing. By 1st March 2008, year ended 31st December 2007. Now they are telling us by 1st March 2008, when the financial statements were approved, okay, SECO had only received an acknowledgement of their application, but no approval. So my question is, between the adjusting period, okay, do these guys have the right to recognize the government grant?
And the reason is because they have not appealed, and it is not probable that they will receive it. That's my opinion.
Perfect. And you are right. If you give that reasoning, of course, they shouldn't recognize what? A government grant. The reason is, between the reporting period and the date when the financials were approved, these guys had not received any confirmation that they will receive the grant. Why? Because they only applied and no approval. So they can't recognize a government grant in their financial statements. But remember, we have a format of answering these questions. We first give something from the standard, then we apply. Is that true, David?
Yes, it is.
So, in accordance with IAS 20, okay, a government grant should be recognized. Now we have those 2 points that we must bring here. Should be recognized only when there is, that's how we put it in our notes, there is reasonable assurance that that the entity shall meet all the grant conditions, all the grant conditions. Okay, what else do we have to say? And what is the second condition? David, what's the second condition? Oh, sorry. Perfect. And that there is reasonable assurance that the grant will be received, and that there is reasonable assurance that the grant will be received. So that is the state part. That is the state part. But remember, the government is going to give them money. So this is more of a revenue grant. Is that true? David, is that true?
Yes, it is.
Because it is not building it's not constructing a building for them. So it is a revenue grant, and therefore we should talk about how are revenue grants treated. Why? The question was how it should be accounted for. So this being a revenue grant, we should also talk about how they are treated. Okay. IAS 20 requires that the revenue, that the grant is recognized in the period when it is receivable. Okay, that the grant is recognized as income in the period when it is receivable. In the period when it is received. Realize that this platform has no autocorrect. So if you type errors, they will remain there, though the examiners don't mark errors. Okay. IAS 20 requires that the grant is recognized as income in the period when it is receivable. That statement is from the standard. Then we are going to apply. All right. So now we are going to rephrase these statements we copied from the scenario. So I'm going to say that the government, I can remove all this. The government is providing a revenue grant through a compensation package of $, okay, available to repair environmental damage, provided the company or the entity, provided the entity, now I'm going to join this, provided the entity applies for this compensation by 31st December 2027. David, are you seeing how I'm adjusting the statements?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to see that it is provided that Colatco had only received an acknowledgement of its application by 1st March 2x8 when the financial statements were approved. Okay, were approved. This was not an approval for the receipt of the grant. As such, there is no assurance that it shall receive this grant. You see how I have merged the information, Ivan?
Yes, I think it is very clear. I see.
Therefore, Colatco should not recognize. Therefore, Colatco should not recognize any grant, any government grant in its financial statements. You see, we've answered the question and we've been building how the following should be accounted for in the financial statements. We've stated what the standard says. This is all from the standard. Then we've applied, based on what we stated, we have applied, getting information from the exhibit. Applied. After seeing that we fully applied, then we concluded. And the conclusion always answers the question, how should it be accounted for? We are saying it shouldn't be accounted for because the conditions, or there is no assurance that they will receive this money. Assuming that they apply 1,000 companies, will the government give all of them? Of course, no. All right, David, is there any question for me? Or we call it an evening and we wait for the more questions?
So how are we going to approach the more questions? In the Word and Excel and just submit?
Yes, I'm going to upload the questions in the learning platform. In fact, to make it easy, let me just put it in the group. I'll put the questions, PDF copy, in the group. You use your Microsoft Word, you attempt the questions, but you can also use the practice platform. Do we all know how to access that option?